In my most recent video, I talked about this emergent phenomenon of hypermodern solipsism, the idea that people are stuck in their own heads, and to the degree it exists in the current year, it is proportionally something we just hitherto have never known. This idea that you encounter somebody and you can't fathom that they might think differently, let alone view the world even moderately differently. But today I want to talk about the very roots of ideology itself. What is ideology? Well, ideology, of course, is more or less a belief system. But I think what I'd like to do is disabuse people, not necessarily you, the audience, but broadly, generally speaking, of the notion that ideology is something that is highly constructed. Now, ideology is constructed. Most ideologies, if they're robust, have bullet points, they have talking points, and people both for and against this particular ideology can cite these bullet points. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. We all know that we live in a supercharged, hypercharged political environment these days. Everything seems political, and of course, to some degree, that was always the case. But through the power of the internet and the power of modern technology, politics is a bit like food and water. It's just there. People imbibe it, they consume it, they drink it, and it's omnipresent. You can't avoid it. But let's start with why people are so invested in politics, and then we'll move on. People feel strong intuitions about things. They feel strongly drawn to certain phenomena. And as a consequence of that, they tend to get involved in these politics. They might have a strong view on, say, abortion or taxation rates or some of the many more controversial topics that one is not openly allowed to discuss on YouTube. But nonetheless, they feel drawn to it. Everyone feels like they have a stake in politics. The question is, why? Why is politics something that at once is so accessible and at the same time so inaccessible? After all, as discussed earlier, one man's politics is another man's anathema. Part of the reason, of course, is the technological stuff, as mentioned before. It has served to proliferate the many political phenomena we can observe. But politics really, and the views people have and feel drawn to, politics really is an extension of personality, an extension of innate psychology. People feel drawn to certain politics because they feel that these viewpoints or forms of politics that they can observe represent something that is innate to them, something that belongs to them as a personality trait. And people, generally speaking, with a few exceptions, have some modicum of ego. And so people want to express how they feel about the world and what they are drawn to. And when you see larger manifestations of politics, what it really comes down to is birds of a feather flocking together, as it were, which is to say, people of like-minded psychological properties and similar mentalities, which are a combination of both genes and environment, being pushed in the direction of certain political inclinations. And because politics is so intimate and internal to human beings, they over-attribute importance to it in a sense by getting heavily invested in it, and they find the opposing view, to get back to the previous video, oh my God, you don't really think that way, do you? That is, of course, a manifestation of solipsism of some sort, but it's also a manifestation of encountering something that's not innate to you. Again, birds of a feather flock together. So people feel really invested in politics primarily because politics is the outward expression of internal personality, mentality, and psychology. And everyone feels like they have a stake in it and something to say about politics because everybody has a personality, effectively. Something that is quite different from other subjects. not everybody feels like they have something to say about the movement of Earth's tectonic plates. Probably a vanishingly small number of people really care about the movement of Earth's tectonic plates. They're almost certainly geologists, and they have a lot to say, and they're invested in it because their particular psychologies, in this case, have begotten this interest in geology and therefore the movement of Earth's tectonic plates. A rather dry example, I will grant you that, but nonetheless an example that is illustrative of this point. But again, everybody has a personality, everyone has intuitions about things, about what is right and wrong, and sometimes these things differ, and therefore you get this outward manifestation of political expression, and therefore also the reason why everyone is so invested and everyone likes to participate. But that's exactly my point, getting back to the original question of what is ideology? Ideology is something that comes afterwards. Ideology comes after the innate psychological stuff, which is to say, ideologies that are robust and well-formed are almost always derivative of less well-formed political positions, but more importantly, of these innate psychological and personality traits that individuals have and then cobble together. And consequently, ideologies really only exist to both justify and defend internal personality traits and internal human psychology. Ideology, in a sense, is a kind of post hoc rationalization, form of argumentation for the existence of priors that have very little to do with the outside world and much more to do with the inner workings of an individual's mind. Of course, pieced together collectively, like-minded individuals. And there's very little to do with the arguments themselves. People are starting from a position. That position has largely been conceived by forces outside of the individual's control, and then they argue for that position. What can be done about this? Nothing. It's the story of human life and human existence. Absolutely nothing can be done about this. This is simply how we tick and how we work. However, theoretically, if indeed humans wanted to get along better, they could acknowledge these things, recognize that there are differences, recognize that these differences come from places that are largely unknown to us. We don't know why we believe certain things or why our intuitions point us a certain way. These things simply emerge as a result of the constituents of our minds, which is to say, our genes and environment, and then you move on from there. But if you could acknowledge that, theoretically, in some other plane of existence that we do not inhabit, because it's never going to happen in the real world, hypothetically, you could say, that is how that came about, that is how this came about. We can just live with each other, we can just get along, whatever. And we wouldn't be biting each other's heads off at the opposing or differing views we might encounter, because we would understand the providence of these views, the etiology of these views. But of course, that is a pipe dream, because that's not the reality we live in. I'm simply explaining how it could work, just as I've explained how these things come to be. Please subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber. Like the video, share the video, hit the bell icon to be informed of my videos, because nobody is informed of my videos. And as always, if I'm still alive, I will check you out later. May the gods watch over you. Take care. Bye-bye. And enjoy your forthcoming weekend. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.